It was time, really. The reason all of us in the Beatles shied away from Beatles material directly after the breakup.
When people hear the name Paul McCartney, they picture the melodic genius of the Beatles. The man who wrote Yesterday, smiled charmingly through the 60s, and helped redefine modern pop. But behind that polished public image lies a fiercely opinionated artist with sharp thoughts on his peers. While he's usually diplomatic in interviews, those close to him have seen the mask slip, revealing unfiltered critiques of bands he considered overrated, derivative, or simply annoying. As former Wings guitarist Denny Laine once admitted in a 2018 interview, there was always that friendly competition with Paul. But once you stepped over a certain line, he didn't hesitate to speak his mind behind closed doors. From behind-the-scenes rivalries to subtle jabs in the press, Paul's private thoughts about other artists were often much harsher than fans realized. These weren't just personal clashes, they reflected deep creative disagreements about music's direction and what it meant to innovate. Here are 6 bands that rubbed Paul McCartney the wrong way, sometimes to the point of genuine hostility. 6. Oasis. You'd think a band that openly idolized the Beatles would have earned McCartney's respect. But in the case of Oasis, their brash swagger and musical mimicry had the opposite effect. Paul found their obsession a bit much, said longtime publicist Jeff Baker. He felt they were reducing his life's work to a few recycled chords. Even as Noel Gallagher praised McCartney's songwriting, Paul reportedly bristled at what he saw as shallow imitation. During a private dinner in the late 90s, he told producer George Martin, "They've got the attitude right. But where's the originality?" The tension peaked when Noel infamously claimed Oasis was bigger than the Beatles, in 1996. McCartney, according to biographer Philip Norman, was furious, dismissing them as arrogant upstarts with half the skill and twice the ego. Their encounters remained awkward, especially at the 2000 Q Awards, where Liam Gallagher asked Paul for an autograph and was met with a noticeably cold reaction. Though Paul has since acknowledged their contributions to guitar music, insiders say he never saw them as equals. His 2018 GQ remark summed it up. "Good songs. Wish they'd found their own voice." 5. The Monkees. Unlike Oasis, the Monkees didn't even pretend to be a real band when they started, and that infuriated McCartney. To him, they were the antithesis of what the Beatles had built. They were 4 actors playing at being musicians, recalled Beatles assistant Alistair Taylor. Paul considered them a plastic parody. What especially bothered McCartney was how the Monkees piggybacked off the Beatles' innovations, copying psychedelic visuals after Sgt. Pepper's and mimicking their style without the musical foundation. George Harrison once said Paul would get visibly annoyed whenever the Monkees came up. He thought they were copying our blueprint without doing the hard work. An infamous 1968 party encounter with Mickey Dolenz didn't help. Paul reportedly walked away mid-conversation. Even decades later, his praise was lukewarm at best, catchy tunes. But no Beatles, were they? 4. The Bee Gees. Few bands experienced a meteoric rise like the Bee Gees during the disco boom. And McCartney didn't take it well. While he never publicly dissed the Gibb brothers, insiders say he was privately annoyed by their shift from Beatlesque ballads to disco chart dominance. Paul felt they'd sold out, recalled Wings guitarist Lawrence Juber. He'd hear those falsetto harmonies and grumble about how they'd abandoned their roots for cash. The situation got tense when both acts recorded in the same Miami studio in 1979. Studio manager Tony Bongiovi claimed McCartney arranged his sessions to avoid the Bee Gees entirely. What stung even more was the critical acclaim they received. After Saturday Night Fever, when some critics labeled the Bee Gees songwriting geniuses, Paul scoffed to his bandmates. "They're using the same 3 chords as everyone else. Just faster, with a drum machine." Even in tribute, McCartney remained distant. His statement after Maurice Gibbs' 2001 death was noticeably brief, fueling speculation that the creative rivalry had never truly ended. 3. The Sex Pistols. If any movement represented the antithesis of McCartney's musical values, it was punk, and no one embodied that more than the Sex Pistols. "Paul couldn't stand them," said John Eastman, Linda McCartney's brother, in a rare 2003 interview. He saw punk as an attack on everything he helped create. Things turned personal when the Sex Pistols openly mocked the Beatles, using their posters for target practice and calling McCartney a dinosaur. Wings drummer Denny Seiwell recalled how hurt Paul was beneath the surface bravado. An attempt at cordiality in 1977 ended badly. McCartney tried introducing himself at London's Air Studios, only for Sid Vicious to mutter something dismissive about establishment sellouts. Paul turned and walked away, never interacting with them again. Although he later admitted punk helped shake up the industry, he never warmed to the Pistols. In a 2016 BBC interview, when asked about the band, his terse reply said it all. "Not my cup of tea, really." 2. The Rolling Stones. The Beatles-Stones rivalry is rock legend, but it wasn't all friendly competition. While both bands played nice in public, Paul McCartney's private views were often biting. "I always thought they were a blues cover band that got lucky," he allegedly told George Martin during a 1968 Abbey Road session. This sentiment resurfaced in a 2021 New Yorker interview, when Paul doubled down. "They're a blues cover band. I think our net was cast wider than theirs." Mick Jagger quickly fired back, joking that the Beatles were just a 4-piece with one drummer. Behind the scenes, McCartney viewed the Stones as constantly following in the Beatles' footsteps, from album concepts to studio experimentation. He was especially irritated when John Lennon considered producing a Stones record in 1969, reportedly questioning, "Why waste time on them when we've got our own things to do?" When asked about the rivalry in later years, Paul's responses remained diplomatic, but subtly condescending. "They're a great band, just not the Beatles, are they?" 1. The Beach Boys. No rivalry stung McCartney quite like the one with Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. What began as mutual admiration spiraled into an unspoken competition between two pop masterminds. "Paul and Brian were like chess grandmasters," said producer Tony Visconti, each trying to outmaneuver the other creatively. McCartney has long acknowledged the genius of Pet Sounds, even crediting it as inspiration for Sgt. Pepper's. But after that, tensions rose. Paul felt the Beach Boys began echoing the Beatles too closely, both sonically and visually. During studio sessions in the late 60s, Paul would often vent about how the Yanks are catching up, according to Beatles roadie Mal Evans. He was particularly bothered when Good Vibrations outshined recent Beatles tracks on the charts. Despite continued mutual respect, McCartney's competitive streak remained. His praise of the Beach Boys always came with a qualifier, admiring their work, but quietly insisting the Beatles had done it first, and better. In the end, Paul McCartney's musical rivalries weren't fueled by ego alone. They were born from his deep passion for songwriting and innovation. As much as he admired talent, he expected originality and authenticity, and when he didn't see it, he didn't hide his disappointment. His critiques, sometimes harsh, often private, reveal the artist beneath the legend. A man still chasing the perfect melody and unafraid to challenge anyone, even rock royalty, who fell short. And there you have it. A deep dive into the rivalries and raw opinions of Paul McCartney that most fans never get to see. Music history isn't just about the songs. It's also about the tension, the egos, and the moments behind the scenes that shape the legends we admire. If you enjoyed this video and want more untold stories from the world of rock, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a new upload. This is Rock Fame Diaries, where we dig deeper into the music, the myths, and the legends that shaped rock history. Thanks for watching, and keep the spirit of rock alive. God bless.